This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. Man, oh man, what a crazy weekend and week of wrestling that we've got to get into. It's been absolutely insane, and there's a ton of news and notes and just backstage antics and everything going on in the world of wrestling. We've got promotions in WWE. We've got major injuries in AEW. We've got guys basically getting suspended all over the place. We're going to touch on all of it. We've got to get into all of it. There were also two major pay-per-views that we're going to quickly run through to get you caught up on who won those because of all of the actions and antics and everything that took place in the other realm of WWE and AEW. Stuff that actually didn't take place in the ring. Stuff that took place outside of the ring. For some reason, it's a little bit more important. It's a little bit more interesting than what's actually going on in the squared circle. Doing it with me, as always, he's the one, he's the only, he is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
I can't wait to recap everything that went down on these two pay-per-views. It was spectacular in regards to two companies putting on shows. It really set the table. And then WWE counter-programming what went down at AEW with an NXT event. So I thought that it was a fascinating weekend last weekend. I was into it. But before we get into the recap, and we're going to recap it all, and then you're going to have your great news and notes segment that I always look forward to, I do want to bring up this one thing. I think it's a topic that might be overriding in regards to professional wrestlers. And I saw it online. I thought it might have been the best piece of advice someone had given these wrestlers, which is a lot of times now you're seeing Triple H and the WWE and AEW, they're doing a lot of these post-event scrums with the media. Now, if you go on YouTube and you watch the WWE one, it was embarrassing. Pure embarrassing. Great intro from Triple H to recap the event. Great. Then Roman Reigns comes and he sits down. He's in character. So he is in character being Roman Reigns and pissed off. A media member gets up and he asks a question, and Roman Reigns stands up and he's like, you know what? He's all pissed and he's like, I want you to do what this crowd didn't do, acknowledge me. And the media member like froze and said, I acknowledge you. And it ended up being, if you watched that 30 minutes, like really a PR fest. I don't like that in any capacity. I would rather it be a real, like, hey, break character, tell us the event. And then in AEW, a huge fallout happened. In my mind, if you're going to do those things for free and then you're going to face ramifications, if I'm a wrestler, I'm saying when you ask me to go up there and answer questions from the media and I'm going to face repercussions and the boys getting pissed about what I say, that's not good for the boys. It's good for entertainment, but I would not do them. And I think it's actually hurting WWE and AEW by doing it because it's not informative. Some of them are in character, some of them are not. But a major player in the world of wrestling was punished or potentially looked at in a different light because of shit he says in a media session. Now, that is kind of like a professional sport, but I would rather wrestling go a different way as opposed to that. Just have your girls that interview the wrestlers, do the stuff, couple questions with Tony Khan and keep it moving, because if it's going to be a PR fest and just a bunch of questions like, hey, tell me about your next great event, WWE, that's going to be around the world, it was hilarious. You got to go watch it. The media member literally was like, I acknowledge you. Yes, Roman, I acknowledge you. It was so hilarious. It stuck out. I wouldn't do these media sessions if you're a wrestler.
So I really want to get into all of that, and I want to tell you why you're absolutely wrong for your opinion. So I want to save that for the back end. I want to say that for the AEW part of it, because what you're referencing has a lot to do with AEW. Let's get into WWE real quick, because I feel like there's more meat on the bone with AEW and everything that kind of transpired there.
No doubt.
And I'm going to tell you why your opinion absolutely sucks and why you're wrong. So stick tuned for that. We're going to get into that here very, very shortly. WWE put on a fantastic show. Clash at the Castle was absolutely great. Like I said, we're going to just kind of run through a lot of these results just because we got to get through them, because there's so much other stuff that really took place that is incredibly interesting. Damage Control ends up winning by pinning Bianca Belair, Asuka, and Alexa Bliss. Gunther ends up winning by pinfall to retain his Intercontinental Championship belt over Sheamus. This was an incredibly hard-hitting match. Liv Morgan retains her WWE SmackDown Women's title over Shayna Baszler. Going to be interesting to kind of see what direction they go in here. On SmackDown, they showed Ronda Rousey winning a title shot to go up against Liv. There's going to be something with Shayna getting worked into the mix here with Ronda and Shayna possibly tag teaming or them having each other's back. It'll be interesting to see what takes place. Rey Mysterio and Edge end up beating Judgment Day. However, Dominic turned. Dominic didn't turn the way we had predicted it was going to go, but he did turn at the very end of the match. In the end, Rey and Edge win. Dominic ends up kicking Edge in the nuts and then clotheslining the shit out of Rey Mysterio and joins the Judgment Day. Seth Rollins pins Matt Riddle for the win. Roman Reigns retains his championship with the new addition to the Bloodline, which we're going to get into here very, very shortly. I want to know, do you feel like WWE missed a bit of an opportunity here with Drew McIntyre? We both picked Drew McIntyre to win this match. In the end, Roman Reigns reigned supreme, and it really felt like Drew McIntyre, everybody was behind him. Again, he's the hometown boy. It really felt like they possibly missed an opportunity here, and I know it had some of us in the group chat upset. Did you feel like WWE totally missed a step here and could have really helped elevate Drew McIntyre a little bit more?
Absolutely. It set the tone for my frustration with a lot of the events that happened. Great wrestling, but in regards to how I felt the events turned out, in regards to creative and storyline purposes, it was horrible. I mean, what better way to... I don't want my wrestling shows that I watch, that I sit 2.5 hours to watch, to end with an outsider, an entertainer coming in and singing with the wrestler that lost. That is, and I know some people will say, oh, you're just being old school and things like that, but I understand the E part of WWE, but you've just come out and said that Triple H just said in an interview that I spent an hour and a half watching that there's also aspects of wrestling that you need to emphasize. And when Drew McIntyre loses, I don't need to see Tyson Fury in the ring with him singing and yucking it up. Dude, it actually, if you're going to go down that road, Drew McIntyre should be the most devastated he's ever been. You lose in your home country, you got to be pissed and mad. Instead, you have this entertaining angle that happens. I thought that it kind of took the great match that it was down a notch in my mind, and it was a wasted opportunity. What better way to move this forward than to end the reign on the road? Like I said, and I said it last week, and I'll stand by it. It makes it really pointless to watch these overseas shows if nothing major is going to happen. You know, you've never had really a significant debut. You've never had really like a earth-shattering title change. Nothing earth-shattering. You missed the boat. You debut somebody, but I don't think that crowd really knew who that dude was. It's like, okay, it's somebody that's going to be joining the Bloodline. It just fell short. It was disappointing. I didn't like it. The match was great. It was a perfectly told match. You realize Drew McIntyre is at the highest level of wrestling, and he belongs there. I just wasn't happy at all, and I just was not happy in any kind of way that you're ending a show that has a character lose with dudes singing together. That just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, that's not a great way to close out a show. Solo Sikoa, if you watched NXT, ends up joining the Bloodline. If you watch NXT, you know a little bit of the backstory here. You know that he is part of the Uso family tree. He's a cousin of Roman Reigns. You know all these things. Solo Sikoa, there was just to give everybody a little background, there was a early pitch by Vince McMahon to bring him up and put him in the Bloodline. He said, no, I want to do this my own way. So he went through NXT, did everything in NXT, and now he's got his call up. And he's got his call up as being the heavy heater for Roman Reigns. He's the guy who is supposed to be the toughest dude in the Bloodline. He's the guy who can basically regulate everybody. He's supposed to have the Street Fighter mentality. So it'll be interesting to see how they end up using him. I'm not sure if it's gotten off to the best start initially. Let's transfer over into what took place on Monday, because we're going to talk about Solo Sikoa, and we're going to talk about his introduction to SmackDown here very, very shortly. Braun Strowman returns on Monday, shows up on Friday night on SmackDown. How do you want to see Braun utilized?
That's a great question. Really great question, because first of all, I did hear the whispers, but I didn't really believe that it was actually going to take place. Obviously, Triple H hinted at it a little bit in regards to athletes returning, but boy, the crowd was definitely into Braun Strowman this week. And it's great, dude. It was great because I had a chance to have a conversation with the dude. And, I thought that he might have took his career in a different direction, but I think the opportunity to right the wrong for a character that has the potential to be over, a big dude, I'm curious to see. Now, the debate that we're having in our group chat is, should Braun Strowman be thrust into the main event scene? No, because if Braun Strowman is going to be served up next to Roman Reigns, I'm not coming back for that. Like, I'm coming back for a run at Bobby Lashley. Like, start with the U.S. title. Start back where you're not the top guy, you're the top over guy potentially, but extend that out a little bit. Like, if you're Braun Strowman, I hope that part of the contract that he signed involved opportunities to win. And I think at this point in time, that'll continue to elevate his stature. Like, for me, what's the difference between $1 million and $3 million? I mean, it's a couple million. If you're smart, you can live off of it. For me, I want to be able to be over. I think for him, if he's coming back, he can't be there going, well, if you're going to use me creatively to be next for Roman Reigns, I'm going to sign on the dotted line no matter how much you pay me. No, I want to come in. I want to be the United States champion for a good 4 or 5 months, or the Intercontinental champion for 4 or 5 months. And you see now him on both shows. Whatever prestigious mid-card title you got, that's mine. I want to elevate myself. I want to be the top face. And then I don't want to go up against Roman Reigns. That's just going to be then you're just another notch in someone's belt. You don't want to be that. I want to wait until Cody Rhodes is the guy. If that's the guy that's tabbed to be next, which all indications are it is. I mean, why would you invest that much? And you have to be thinking Cody Rhodes is in line for some major, major run in the next few months when he gets back. I want to go up against Cody Rhodes. I want to do something fresh, something new, some creative new vision with it. So I start Braun Strowman in the mid-card, help out some of the athletes that are maybe being taken advantage of from the Alpha Academy, or you get a lot of cheap pops when Braun Strowman interferes in potentially the bloodline business, stuff like that. You start to plant the seeds that maybe it's Braun and Roman, but not for the title. I want Braun Strowman in the mid-card and having a title and getting over by winning a bunch of matches.
I kind of agree with you. I feel like a slow build for Braun would be best. At this moment in time, you just feed him right to Roman. What's the point? What's the purpose? You go out, you spend all this money, you bring this guy back. He looks like he's in absolutely fantastic shape. Just to feed him to Roman Reigns doesn't make sense. Also, Roman Reigns right now has what appears to be 2 storylines going on. He's got one with Drew McIntyre, and he's got one with Karrion Kross. I don't think we need a third storyline for Roman Reigns at this moment in time. So I think a slow build for him, really helping to elevate him. And then at some point, getting into the title picture with either Roman Reigns, or if that's Cody Rhodes or whomever it may be. At that time, you can insert him into that title picture. But until then, I think a slow build is probably the best thing for Braun. I don't know if I really like him destroying 4 tag teams when he comes out on Monday. I think he really devalued the tag division. What do you make of the backlash? Because there were wrestlers and there were a lot of wrestling talking heads basically talking about how they hated this. What did you make of him destroying the 4 tag teams on his initial debut?
Yeah, I was surprised by that as well, because I wanted to see someone emerge as a contender for the title. But if you're going to, you just can't have it both ways. If you're going to establish Braun Strowman as a legit monster, what better way than to destroy tag teams? But at the same time, it's at the expense of some great tag teams, the Alpha Academy, Street Profits. But in the end, it's par for the course. I mean, are we terribly surprised that the WWE is not fully investing in the tag teams? They're there, but they're not at the forefront other than the Usos. It's kind of like maybe in a way saying that we're going to inch up the Usos by decreasing the other tag teams. I don't believe in that. I believe in having the tag teams be great, and then when the Usos win, then it elevates everybody. Kind of the idea of Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior were 2 at the top of their game, and it made for a tremendous WrestleMania. You wouldn't have wanted to see, Hulk Hogan versus the Brooklyn Brawler. No, never. You're never going to see that. You want to see the elevation of characters, and that's what we've been talking about for years here on the podcast. So I was quite surprised. Really, I was surprised to see him at that point. Really interesting in the manner in which they debut him. Now we got to see and evaluate how it does going forward, because Does this potentially open the door for Bray Wyatt? You never know how this could potentially work long term. But yeah, I'm not into devaluing tag teams. But in regards to Braun squashing everybody, it was cool to see. It was entertaining.
Yeah, what you said, I think, is very interesting, and it's something I didn't really think about. Every tag team in WWE has essentially been devalued for the Usos. The Usos are held to this pedestal. They're put up on this pedestal, and they're just elevated above everybody else. And all the other teams have to basically fight for the scraps. It's really, really weird the way that WWE has done this. I hope this gets corrected. I hope what you're seeing from Triple H with his booking and his booking style is he's slowly evolving and taking things over. There's nothing that says that you can only have a strong champion. You can only have a strong mid-tier champion, and you can't have a strong tag division. There's nothing that says that. You can have strengths all across the board, and I think investing into those tag teams, investing into that tag team division would really, really help WWE. WWE did sustain a little bit of a loss this week. Pat McAfee gets an awesome opportunity. He's going to be doing College Game Day on ESPN. Because of that, he's going to be taking time off from SmackDown. How big of a loss is this for SmackDown to lose a guy like Pat McAfee? Because I'll be honest with you, when SmackDown was absolutely horrible, Pat McAfee was the one thing that kind of kept me tuned in because you weren't ever really sure what he was going to say, and he was incredibly entertaining. There are times where Alyssa is watching wrestling with me, and she is just enraptured by what Pat McAfee is saying and what Pat McAfee is doing because he's so damn entertaining. The show can be absolute trash, and there could be a match on that she doesn't care about, but she's tuning in because of Pat. How big of a loss is it to lose a guy like Pat McAfee, and can Corey Graves offset that loss?
I think he can. Corey Graves has the potential to be the smart wrestling mind that is on there. But of course it's a loss. But it stinks because you recognize there's going to be some characters like Logan Paul, Pat McAfee, Bad Bunny, that just kind of Tyson Fury. There's this subsect of performers that are just going to be periodic. And it's great that McAfee had the opportunity. It's kind of like a break he gets for the college football season, but it's a big chunk. You lose him from September basically until December, and that's a big chunk of the year. But in the end, McAfee is well beyond WWE. It's kind of like The Rock. Not the same level, but this is a guy that's going to be in demand, whether it be the NFL, whether it be college football. I mean, literally, I can't, just real quick, try to give it a minute. If someone gives me $30 million, I'm not taking 5 other jobs. It's like, I have a show, you give me $30 million, I'm good. This guy, I don't know if he is the ultimate narcissist or he's got bad gambling habits, but if the dude wants to work for his own company at the radio show, WWE performer, then wants to also do College Game Day, does the man fucking sleep? Good God, man, you make $30 million. Just stay in your lane Monday through Friday. Enjoy the weekend. Smoke a cigar with the fellas. This dude is burning through so much private plane miles that I don't know how he thinks straight. I don't know how sometimes he's not there on College Game Day being like, this week I predict Roman Reigns to win WrestleMania. He's like, oh, shoot, sorry, college football. And the man is smoking a bunch of weed too. So, God damn, I respect the hustle, but you already made it, bro. Pipe down. Stop sucking up all the media air. Give some other people an opportunity. My God. But we're wrestling fans, and it just sucks because the man's talented and he's now being taken away.
He's done a fantastic job of becoming a different person after his NFL career, and he's gone into a multitude of things. So why not? Just keep doing it. And look, when you're this good at what you do, and people are paying to see you perform and be what you are, and it is you. You're not somebody else. Fucking do it, man. Get that money. I think it's great. We talked a little bit about Solo Sikoa. He was introduced to SmackDown on Friday night, went up against Drew McIntyre. I don't really know how I felt about it. I'm a little bit mixed. I don't hate it. I like the direction they're trying to take this in. I just think it was executed poorly. I don't think it was done as clean as it could have been and really helped get this guy over. What did you make of Solo Sikoa's introduction to SmackDown?
Yeah, so I'm curious, just follow up on that. Because I put a big couple question marks on it because I wasn't sure yet how I wanted to feel about it because you know he's in the bloodline. You know what we saw from him in NXT. Could the debut have been better? What did you think would have been optimal? And once you lay that out there, I'll give you my thoughts because it's real interesting. I liked his character in NXT. I liked the manner in which the potential that he had, but it seems now he's going to be third in the pecking order. How does he kind of fit is kind of my initial thought about it. What would have been a better way? Yeah, Drew probably wasn't optimal, but it was okay for what it was trying to do. What do you think would have been optimal for this situation?
So I like the way that he was introduced. I felt that the way that the Usos built him up, he's like I said, he's the heavy hitter. If you know anything about watching him in NXT, you're a little bit familiar, but he's the heavy hitter. He's the guy who is basically he's the tough guy in the group. Is essentially what he is, and I like that. I like you knew he was going to have to answer to Drew because of what took place over the weekend. I felt like Roman Reigns being there would have helped with his introduction. I'm not sure how the leader of the bloodline is the leader of the bloodline, and you're bringing in a new member, and that new member isn't getting introduced by the leader. That was a little bit wonky to me. As that was unfolding, I was like, well, that's a little bit weird. But all right, I'll go with it. We'll see what happens. He has a match with Drew McIntyre. Match is fine. It's a good match. I don't think there was anything spectacular about the match. I don't think he looked incredibly strong in this match. I don't think he looked weak, but I don't think he looked incredibly strong. You're supposed to be the tough guy. You're supposed to be the heavy hitter. You're supposed to be the guy who can dominate when things get really rough for the bloodline. He just kind of looked like a guy out there to me. He just kind of looked like a dude. Didn't look like he was any stronger than anybody else, like he was any more unbreakable than anybody else. He was just kind of there. And then to kind of wrap all that whole segment up, you have Karrion Kross get involved, and I just like if you're trying to build this guy up, why are you going to take some shine off him by bringing Karrion Kross in? And now, look, I know Karrion Kross has a thing with Drew, and they all got a thing with Roman, and these storylines are getting really convoluted right now. But I just felt like that execution for a guy who is having his debut on SmackDown just wasn't as clean as it could have been. I felt like if he would have looked more dominant against Drew, that would have been better. I think if Roman Reigns was there to basically thank him for helping save his title in Cardiff, I think that would have went a longer way. I think him having a few more moments to maybe speak on the microphone and also not look as he looked a little bit uncomfortable talking on the microphone. I think that would have also went a little bit of a longer way. And I just didn't get any of that. I felt like they just kind of dropped the ball a little bit.
Got it. I think it's one of those things where you're saying the production of how he's debut a little bit better, make him look a little bit stronger as opposed to just being in the mix. And I understand that, but you're also looking at Drew McIntyre. So you got to also remember the other side. And I think that also helps us too, is that they wanted to play the revenge angle because obviously Drew McIntyre's pissed. See, we're looking at it, and I think you and I are in the right mindset as we look at it like, okay, Drew McIntyre's established, and we know what he's about, but I think the good exercise we can ask is, okay, why did they do what they did? So Drew McIntyre is pissed and furious that this dude cost him an opportunity, so the angle is to elevate him a little bit so that the matchup with Karrion Kross also has a little bit more. So you and I are looking at it from the perspective of how do we elevate a new character. WWE doesn't like to do that. I think that's the one thing that you and I and Kenny kind of are in the same boat is we want to see people come in as a true mid-carder with some meaning. Like, hey, kind of come in, not at the level of Cody Rhodes where you're getting a WrestleMania entrance and everyone's like, holy shit, to the moon, win, 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 and you're on TV interviews and you're just on every podcast and you're getting that. But we want the new people to come in and shine a little bit more. And that's where we start to get a little bit of PTSD from the Vince era where all these dudes that came in from NXT just started to look average. It's going to be a slow build. And that's where I think you and I and Kenny kind of got to get into it is that the new character doesn't mean you're over. It just means you got the shot. And that's where it ends. You got called up. Great. But you're not number 1 on the roster. You're number 53 if you're a football fan. You just get to the team. And I think that's where you and I and Kenny are more in line like, dude, you have this guy that is talented. He's new. You should, in a way, bring him in as like this is a big deal because the mindset has been with all these call-ups that they just get slotted in and it's part of the cog. And you and I and Kenny kind of believe that that's not the way it should be, but that's the way it's being done. I think Friday was about in regards to their why, which is let's have the psychology be Drew McIntyre is going to kick this guy's ass because he cost me a title.
Yeah, it's like I said, I get what you're saying, and I understand it. I just felt like it could have been executed a little bit better. To me, it just felt like I wanted more. I needed something else.
Do you think they're ever going? Do you think they're ever going to do that? I think maybe Braun Breaker might get a little bit higher of an elevated stance, but I just think this is what we're gonna get, and it's time for us to accept it. That these dudes are not gonna be like kind of Kevin Owens. You know how Kevin Owens came in? I think that's maybe the bar that you and I look at it from. Like, dude, Kevin Owens comes in and pop-up powerbombs John Cena. So that's just a massive amount of respect. And I think that's the bar that you and I measure it under. And nobody has really come close to that from NXT since. So I wonder, like I said, if we just got to come to accept it in regards to the booking, because that's just the way it is. That's what we've seen. So we'll see how this progresses. But just as a reminder, this dude's more related to the Usos though than Roman Reigns, correct? He's one of their relatives.
Yeah, he's their brother,
as opposed to Roman Reigns, right?
He's their younger brother.
Exactly.
He's cousins with Roman.
So exactly, that's why you could make the argument Roman doesn't necessarily got to be there. Big Bro's got to be there to protect the little guy that just showed up, on the scene.
Yeah, I feel like if you're the head of the table, you should be the one who's introducing the newest member to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we had a ton that took place this past weekend. We've got to get into AEW. It has been, I don't know about you, but it has been the one thing that I've been checking social media for. It's been the one thing that I've been incredibly glued into. We're going to get into all of the results, and we're going to talk about all of the fallout because there was a ton that took place at All Out. We had our mystery entrant, who was later revealed to be MJF. He ends up winning as Stokely Hathaway, and all the guys that he's been acquiring and giving cards to. They attacked the ring, and they attacked everybody in it, only for Stokely to climb a ladder, pull the chip down, and then the mystery entrant comes in, and he gives him the chip. He feigns like he's going to take the mask off that he's wearing, only to say, not yet, now's not the time, and he walks out. As he entered, if you watch anybody's body language ever, and you watch the way that they walk, they carry themselves, instantly you knew, or at least you suspected it was MJF. Turns out later on it was MJF, and I thought that was well done. Jade Cargill gets worked over for about 3.5 minutes, and then she gets a win in about 4 minutes over Athena. Made absolutely no sense. I don't think it did anything for either woman. I thought it was absolutely horrible. Wardlow and FTR end up beating Jay Lethal and the Motor City Machine Guns. Christian Cage beats Jungle Boy. Now, Luchasaurus ends up beating him up before the match. This was something we had discussed a week prior about what is Luchasaurus going to end up doing. Luchasaurus ends up turning on Jungle Boy, sides with Christian, and annihilates Jungle Boy. Powerhouse Hobbs destroys Ricky Starks. Darby Allin, Sting, and Miro end up beating House of Black. We're going to talk a little bit about the former Aleister Black, now Malachi Black. We're going to talk a little bit about him later on in the news and notes as he basically waved to the crowd. It wasn't shown on scene, but he waved to the crowd and he hugged the members of House of Black. So a little bit of news on what is taking place with the House of Black. Swerve in My Glory beats the Acclaim. This was a fantastic match. This was probably the match of the night. The Acclaim are so freaking over. It's absolutely crazy. Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks are the new trios champs, beating the Dark Order and Hangman Page. Nobody's surprised. Chris Jericho, in a surprise move, ends up beating Bryan Danielson. Tony Storm wins the Fatal 4-Way to become the interim AEW Women's Champ. And then CM Punk and Jon Moxley have a match. CM Punk wins. This is when things kind of go off the rails. And this is where I think you and I have to go back to that conversation we were having to open the show. And we've got to have a little bit of a discussion. After every AEW show, they have what they call a media scrum. It's basically where Tony Khan sits in the back. He'll bring in a wrestler or two. This is something he picked up from New Japan. New Japan does this, and I think New Japan does it incredibly well. He'll sit in the back. He'll bring in a wrestler. They'll talk about the match. They'll kind of talk about the direction that they want everything to go, and they'll talk about kind of what's next, what's upcoming, and just kind of what took place. And if there's anything that's ancillary, any news or notes that reporters have questions for, they've got Tony Khan in front of them. They can ask those questions. Now, most of the time, the wrestlers do these in character. I think Chris Jericho is one guy who kind of walks that fine line between being out of character and in character when he does these. I don't know if there's anything that says that you have to be in character when you do these. Obviously, it makes it a little bit better when you do it in character. If you watch the Swerve in My Glory segment, Swerve was absolutely in character. Keith Lee, I think, kind of was in and out of character while he was doing his. So there's a little bit of flexibility. Where things go a little bit wonky here, they end up having the fight. They go to the post pay-per-view presser. CM Punk goes on a tirade. Before anybody can ask a question, there's this guy, I think his name is like Nick Gertz or Nick Skurowitz, and he stands up and he's about to ask a question. CM Punk interrupts him and basically says, anybody in this room fancy themselves a journalist? If you do, raise your hand. And a couple of people raise their hands. And CM Punk then starts going off about Colt Cabana and the whole Colt Cabana mess, starts going off, calling out the EVPs of the company, names Nick Jackson and names Hangman Page in very derogatory terms. The whole time this is going on, you've got Tony Khan sitting there looking incredibly uncomfortable. Tony Khan, I think, is just a very awkward guy as it is. I wouldn't be surprised if Tony Khan was a little bit on the spectrum because he's incredibly creative, but sometimes he just comes off as very socially awkward. And he looks like he is just sitting on hot coals the entire time this is going on. Tries to redirect CM Punk. CM Punk shuts him down multiple times. After the presser, goes to the back. In his dressing room, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks confront CM Punk and Ace Steel. This leads to an all-out brawl. Things get a little bit murky with what took place with the brawl. Things that are known. Nick Jackson's hit in the face with a chair. Sounds like Ace Steel bit and pulled the hair of Kenny Omega. Also sounds like Kenny Omega threw a couple of punches at Matt Jackson. So again, really, really amped up, really, really hot in the back. Now, before we really get into any of the questions regarding any of this, you said that you feel that these pressers and these media scrums aren't necessary. And for the most part, I agree with you. We haven't had them in wrestling in forever. Tony Khan was the one who kind of brought this back. New Japan has them, but here in American wrestling, we don't have them. You don't necessarily need them. Tony Khan wants to conduct his wrestling organization with a more real-life sports feel. This gives it that more real-life sports feel because after every game, you've got a media presser. You know this covering the Detroit Lions. So this allows for that. It allows for that feel. They also keep records of wins and losses, and there's supposed to be a hierarchy of if you have more wins and you're on a bit of a hot streak, you get elevated up and you become the number one contender. And it's supposed to be very, very obvious. It's supposed to be very transparent. I don't really think it has been very transparent the last couple of years, but it's supposed to be. Now, you said that they shouldn't do these. Now, I don't think that they shouldn't do these. I think that they're fine. I don't think they have to do these. I think what happens is you get a guy like CM Punk who went into this not wanting to talk about the match he had, went into this to talk about a lot of things that he had on his mind and to bury some of the talent that he works with and make it known that I'm the big guy here. I'm the dude. And if you got a problem, you better take it up with me. And it was more of him getting on a soapbox, pointing his finger down at everybody else and screaming at everybody. It was an uncomfortable 23 minutes. That's how long this went on. It was you can go find it on YouTube. I watched it. It was very uncomfortable. And with this specific incident, this is a wrestler who is extremely bitter about everything, taking out whatever is bothering him because he hasn't had a chance to talk about it. And that's what this was. I don't think that they shouldn't do these. I just think that the wrestlers who are doing them need to be held accountable. In this case, CM Punk needs to be held accountable. You totally took something over and you used it for your own personal gain, which doesn't benefit the bottom line, which is the business. This doesn't benefit the business in any way because now we're going to have massive amounts of suspensions. We're going to have guys not in action. And you tell me, would you rather see Kenny Omega and would you rather see the Young Bucks defending their trios titles, or would you rather them not be on the show at all? The answer is you'd much rather see them defending their titles, but you can't because now they're suspended. So I don't think that these are bad, and I don't think that these are wrong. I don't think they're necessary. I think the wrestlers who are involved with them need to be held under better control, and they need to conduct themselves and do what is best for business. What's your thought on where I'm coming from with this?
Yeah, it's just like I said, when you see those that are going to get punished or have heat with the boys, you look at it and you say, yeah, of course you're going to be held accountable. Now that's the crux of the conversation, is that what you say in these things is now potentially going to have significant reverberating effects. But maybe, at the same time, when you learn the potential ramifications, wrestlers know their body. So if CM Punk's like, oh, fuck, I fucked up my triceps, and he knows, oh, fuck, you pop it, you go, fuck, I'm done for the year. And you're like, fuck it, I'm just going to now close the accounts for the next 8 months and let it rip so that people will have other things to talk about other than the fact that you were not, other than the fact that you're not going to be around anymore. But it just stinks because a lot of this became a lot of drama, and we're talking about it and not the great match that they indeed did have. He had a good match with Jon Moxley. But whether, egos with the boys is fine. It's not like I said, it's cool to look into. It's not my cup of tea because you realize, okay, everybody wants a top spot. Everybody wants, at this point in time, it just kind of, and I kind of now see a little bit where you're coming from when you say that you have this beef with CM Punk. It's just one of those things where he's got fuck you money. He doesn't care. He doesn't have to care. He knows that at some point, at a certain level, if he ever comes back, there's going to be some section of people that are going to cheer CM Punk. But it is a diversion away from the guy that came in a year ago. And if he's going to get into a lot more of the backstage beef with the boys, that's a little bit corny to me. It's not the thing I'm looking for. I want to see his more connectivity with the audience and the boys that are in the ring, but it does create intrigue. It still has a little bit of a feel of, enhancing, it's hard for me to shake the fact that it could be a work, but it has the idea of, for me, of a shoot that could be turned into a work. The fact that they're not taking advantage of it on screen sucks. So by and large, all in all, it's just a shitty situation. So when you look at it for the boys, it's just not worth it. If you're going to just go up there and take questions and you're going to then have to, just do what I'm saying is, if you want to start taking questions, then you just go in the ring and start getting interviewed and have Tony Schiavone ask those questions. Because, there's still part of it. It's like it's a scripted show. The things are predetermined. So I get you want to see how you feel, but that's what you have podcasts for. You have this myriad of networks that can protect you with the people that are employed to kind of guide it in a way that's promoting the company. So to just go out there in front of the media that can ask whatever. I mean, look, okay, and correct me if I'm wrong. You just had this great matchup. You just had this great event at a pay-per-view. It's considered one of the marquee four that AEW runs. And one of the first questions is about Colt Cabana. Who gives a flying fuck?
No, the question wasn't about Colt Cabana. He took the conversation in that direction. The reporter stood up, basically stated his name, and CM Punk interrupted him and was like, "You did improv, right?" And he was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Who'd you do improv with?" Like, CM Punk knew who this reporter was. He was like Scott Colton. He was like, "Okay." And he was like, "So you're friends with Scott Colton?" And he was like, "No, Scott Colton and I haven't seen eye to eye in years. We see things very differently. I don't talk to him. I don't consider him a friend at all." He was like, "Okay, good." And then he's like, "Who in this room fancies themselves as a reporter?" And then he just starts his tirade. Like the question was never about CM Punk, or it was never about Colt Cabana. The question was going to be about the match and about what happened with MJF. And MJF coming back, the question was to help set up what was coming next, or what is supposed to be coming next.
Got it.
Instead, he took this time. He took 23 minutes to go off and bury the entire locker room and bury Tony Khan's decision making for putting people in position of power. So I
got to ask you, 8 months or whatever the return date will be for CM Punk, and you'll reveal why in a few moments. Should CM Punk be part of AEW?
No.
Okay.
Because he comes out He had the locker room is completely fractured right now. When this company first started, this company was doing great business. It was like best friends wrestling best friends, and it was great, and we all loved it. Since CM Punk has come in to the locker room has been completely fractured, and there's been nothing but heat. Sometimes, you and I both know this watching sports, sometimes you have to let a great player go because they are just bad for the locker room. The team sometimes gets better by subtraction. In this case, I think AEW gets better by subtracting CM Punk. I think the locker room will function at a higher efficiency and be a much better place to work when CM Punk is gone. Look at what happened on Wednesday Night's Dynamite. Wednesday Night's Dynamite was a really great show. It was really fantastic. For having all of the BS that you had to come out of with everything that took place over the weekend, all eyes were on Dynamite. All eyes were on Dynamite. This morning before we started recording, I quickly checked Twitter, and they basically pulled I think it was a 0.38 share. They were second to a 0.39 for Real Housewives, one of their best ratings that they have done in forever. They had over 1 million views. Okay, fantastic for them. All right. And who wasn't there? CM Punk wasn't there. Now, I get it. A lot of the noise and a lot of the reason why the eyes were watching was because CM Punk stirred up this pot. But everybody was watching, and it was still a fantastic show. You went away from the show not necessarily wanting. You don't necessarily need CM Punk. You don't. And honestly, let's be perfectly honest here. What has he given you since he's been there? I think he's had maybe 4, 5 matches. Maybe 6. I don't think he's gotten anybody over who wasn't already over. I don't think he's done anything to help bring up any of that younger talent. We talk about Chris Jericho. I love Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho is my favorite wrestler of all time. I don't give a shit about Ric Flair. I love John Cena, but I think Chris Jericho is a way better wrestler than him. Kurt Angle, a lot of people love him. Chris Jericho is the best wrestler, in my opinion, of all time. He is the GOAT. Chris Jericho has helped elevate so many people in that company. It's unreal. I could give you a list right now, and you'd be like, oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that. He's helped elevate so many guys. Who has CM Punk helped elevate? MJF has helped elevate Wardlow. CM Punk hasn't helped elevate anybody. He was supposed to come in, and I'm here to help elevate all the younger guys. The only person he's helped elevate is himself. And at this point, I feel like he's helped elevate himself out of this company. You don't need CM Punk. He cost you too damn much money for the problem and for the headache. He's not worth it. I would get rid of him. Would you keep him around?
Probably not for the collective good, but I'm all about profit. So if I can think this guy's going to make profit with all these guys, I mean, oh my God. Could you imagine CM Punk, the next CM Punk Adam Hangman Page match? Oh, I'd watch it. I'd be right there at the forefront. But I'm glad that if they can pivot and they can pivot to MJF, what a great way to go with that. Now you can just highlight other people as well. So I think the efforts made for a show, Dynamite, that was intended to kind of right the ship, they did that. I thought the A+ effort, I thought everything on there was great in terms of wrestling, in terms of what the potential of the company can be. I'm not really thrilled that they had to strip everything with the trios and then the world title. And you and I and Kenny joke about how Tony Khan loves himself some tournaments. But if you're going to have a tournament, I think my quick thought on it will be, it's time. Bryan Danielson needs to take down the belt and give him a run, because I think then you'll have an opportunity to have a true wrestling champion to be at the forefront of a company. If it's Moxley again, it's just going to be weird. I think it should be Bryan Danielson earning the shot and hopefully having a nice long 6 to 8 month reign.
Yeah, and you know what? I like the direction where you're headed with that, because I did have a question regarding that, because the way they've got this bracket set up, you've got Moxley and Sammy Guevara on one end, and you've got Jericho and you've got Daniel Bryanson on the other end. It's like, okay, you've got 2 guys from 2 different factions going up against each other. Let's be honest here about what was going to take place. Jon Moxley lost his title because he was supposed to go on vacation. Chris Jericho was supposed to go out and be on a bit of a vacation as well. They got called back in for Wednesday. It was all hands on deck because we got to fix this. So Moxley comes out, cuts a fantastic promo on MJF, and cuts a fantastic promo. It was absolutely great. I don't see Moxley winning this. I think Sammy Guevara wins his side, and honestly, I think Jericho's got stuff going on. So I think Daniel Bryanson wins his side, and I think you're right. Put it on put on Daniel Bryanson, and let's go. Let's rock and roll. So I love what you're talking about. We did get that promo from MJF, and it had us quickly thinking: is he a face? Is he a heel? What did you think about his promo and Jon Moxley's promo? Because I thought Jon Moxley cut an absolutely fantastic promo.
I was buying it for a second, like we were debating. Whoa,
we like all of us, like we were like, is he coming out as a face? What's going on here?
The crowd wants him to be, but I thought it was great all the way around. A little long to have 2 back-to-back promos be that way. The question that I think has emerged is, but look, both delivered what it needed to be for both in regards to Moxley and MJF are the 2 biggest, so just go back-to-back with it. Did MJF need to bring up WWE on that show? That's been the debate online and a lot of podcasts. Is that MJF's the heel, but on an all-hands-on-deck kind of show, should MJF have just been dropping names like Triple H, The Game, Nick Khan, a lot of inside stuff, on a show where you're trying to really hyper-focus on the brand AEW? We all know he's done it before. It's not out of character. It's for the cheap pop, the cheap oohs and ahs that we all give when a wrestler brings up another company or inside shit. Do you think he needed to do that on that show? Do it next week, the week after, whatever. Do you think, and the other aspect too, the 2 question marks that we have here is, should they have kept MJF a face until Grand Slam and have him do that turn at Grand Slam where Jon Moxley could have said something like, I'm not buying this, you're a two-faced punk, nobody believes it, and then MJF just goes, trust me. And then you could kind of have the big reveal at Grand Slam, kind of just delaying the payoff because they just quickly went into it. They could have extended it out creatively. Was my note was like extend it out just a little bit, but in the end, MJF, whatever he does, is earning high marks.
Look, me and you are pretty intelligent when it comes to this stuff. Me and you have a pretty good understanding of everything that's going on. We have a pretty good grasp of what's taking place and why it's taking place. And both of us, as well as Kenny, who I think is smarter than both of us when it comes to this stuff, we were all like, is he a face? Like, all of us were kind of buying it. Like, wait, hold on, what? Absolutely extend this out. Get all of us talking. I think it would have been way better. I think it would have been way more interesting. And then at the very end, you put the knife in the back. At the very end, you reveal your true colors. Absolutely extend it out. I thought that would have been the perfect way to go. I thought it would have been absolutely incredible. And no, I don't necessarily think he needed to talk about WWE. Not on this show. This show was a complete writing of the tracks because everything had gotten off the tracks. You didn't have to do that. It plays into his character, which is fine, but extend it out, get us all believing. Have Jon Moxley come out and cut the same exact promo, and like you said, just have MJF just be like, trust me. All you got to do is trust me. Believe me. I'll prove it to you. Let me prove to you that I am who I say I am. And along the lines, you could kind of do some things where like, oh, that's a little bit shady, but no, he's a good guy. Give it to us that way, and then stick the knife in our back. That is what we always want. Whether if you're a wrestling fan, that's what you always want. You want to believe that they're a good guy all the way up until the last second where the knife is sticking out of your back. That's what you want. I'm calling the card real quick because I know we have a very long show here and it was not supposed to be this long. Calling the card. We end up splitting on Clash at the Castle. Both of us get a half point. All Out, we get a point for picking MJF to be the mystery opponent. And then we split on All Out, both of us getting a half a point. So we each get 2 points. I lead 12-7. On Show of the Week, I'm going to give it to Dynamite. I thought they did a fantastic job, all things considered. Where do you want to give your nod for Show of the Week?
Absolutely, Dynamite. I thought the main event was great. Everything that went on in that show had a purpose, and it was something that allowed AEW to secure a million viewers for the third consecutive week, and something that is trending upward. Both companies are trending upward, which we like to see. All right, cuz, hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made your list?
Guys, we could talk about everything that fell out from AEW this week. We probably should have just did a whole show on just that because it was absolutely crazy. But a ton going around in the world. News and notes, there's a lot of things that took place. A big promotion, WWE, took place this week. WWE announced Tuesday that Triple H will assume oversight of the company's creative responsibilities after the resignation of Chairman and CEO Vince McMahon. He has been promoted to Chief Content Officer. Per WWE, Monday Night Raw viewership has jumped 15% since Triple H took over on July 25th. WWE has also seen double-digit increases in social media engagement, according to the release. Triple H will now report to WWE co-CEO Nick Khan. Now, we have another fragile champion that has another injury. Speaking on Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer revealed that CM Punk has either undergone or will undergo surgery on what is believed to be a torn tricep injury, and this could take him out of action for up to 8 months. Meltzer said he may have already undergone surgery, but either way, he is undergoing surgery. It's not confirmed to me it was a torn tricep, but it was confirmed to me that it's a surgery for a torn muscle in the arm. So if it's a tricep, bicep, maybe a pec, but probably tricep, and that usually is about an 8-month recovery period. So he was going to be stripped of his title either way, regardless of the fight that ended up taking place. Punk's out for 8 months or whatever it's going to be, 6, 8 months, whatever, if he's not let go. And a lot of people don't want him back. It will be interesting to see if he is welcome back after he heals. The injury took place in the match against Jon Moxley when he did the tope to the outside. If you go back, you rewatch the match, you can see him kind of grabbing at his elbow and kind of flexing his arm. That was where it is believed that he tore his tricep. Now, another AEW star has a very similar injury. Per Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio, Christian Cage is also expected to be on the shelf for about 8 months. He's set to undergo a very similar surgery. Meltzer noted Christian Cage injured his arm, maybe the same exact injury as CM Punk is believed to be, that torn tricep. So we're talking again about 8 months-ish, maybe 6 to 9 months with him being out. So kind of a sad day there. You're going to end up losing 2 top guys. One guy probably best for the locker room. The other guy, I think, it kind of hurts the locker room a little bit. Fallout from the pay-per-view brouhaha has a lot of guys MIA. Per Sports Illustrated, following the backstage fight on Sunday night, Kenny Omega, Matt Jackson, Nick Jackson, Pat Buck, Michael Nakazawa, Brandon Cutler, and Christopher Daniels have all been suspended by the company. The 2 most obvious omissions from the list of names are CM Punk and Ace Steel, with the report claiming that the 2 will either be among those suspended by the company or will no longer be part of the company. Punk met with Tony Khan on Tuesday, with the 2 being able to discuss how the AEW departure could be handled. This report also noted that an external third party is investigating and will conduct an investigation to examine what transpired in the fight. And at that moment when the fight was taking place, Hangman Page had already left the building, which explains his absence from that altercation. So good on him not being there, allowed him to compete for that championship title shot, ended up losing to Daniel Bryanson. And it's going to be interesting. I think the reason we haven't heard, look, I don't see Ace Steel coming back. He's a producer. Honestly, he doesn't do a whole lot. He's basically CM Punk's boy. That's why he's there. I don't see Ace Steel sticking around. I see Ace Steel getting let go. I think once this investigation is concluded, you'll know where CM Punk's going to fall, whether he'll be removed from the company or whether he will be on suspension. This is the thing. All wrestling contracts have this notice of breach in them. It's where you talk bad about the company or you do something that defames or makes the company look bad. You can be fired for that. So Tony Khan has enough ammunition to fire CM Punk where CM Punk can't come back after him in a lawsuit. So it's going to be interesting on whether or not Tony Khan wants to deal with the headache. Everybody else involved, they were there trying to break the fight up, but they were included in this because they were there. Basically, it's just a broad sweeping hand that says, hey, if you were there, you're suspended. Until we get everything figured out, you're all sitting on the shelf. Speaking of sitting on the shelf, this House of Black member may be done with wrestling. Per Fightful Select, numerous AEW talents have told Fightful that they've been told that Malachi Black is done with the company for the foreseeable future, with many saying he got his release. AEW sources claim that the release is highly conditional, which is rare for AEW, as they usually don't release talent outside of disciplinary reasons, with the release request being dealt with on a case-by-case basis. Black asked for his release last week, and it was initially denied. This release is believed to be heavily restricted So there's going to be lots of restrictions attached to it. And that's going to do it for this week's wrestling news and notes.
What a great hour recapping everything. Lots of good news. Both AEW, WWE trying to right the ship this fall as they look to creatively take their companies in a direction that they believe is best for both brands. And I think it's great. AEW, WWE doing what you would expect when two high-profile companies are going head-to-head. Each will make each other better, and that's what makes the pursuit of watching and paying attention to the world of wrestling really, really fun. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSCROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. If you've liked or disliked anything that you've heard, hit us up at Detroit Podcast. Always enjoy the banter, the online banter with the wrestling community. Thanks, everybody, for downloading the latest edition of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast. We'll check in again next weekend.